Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking forward to this meeting. We have spent much too long debating what we are going to debate as opposed to actually getting down to the work the Canadians sent us here for. In my region, there's an incredible amount of uncertainty with the second wave. People are looking to us at this time to show that we can make Parliament work and we can rise above the partisan battles that in other times may seem perfectly okay, but right now we have an obligation to the Canadian people. I've certainly tried to spend a lot of the last few weeks trying to see if we can broker some consensus to move forward. We all recognize that we had started a study on the pandemic spending that had gone awry with the WE project, and that had begun in the summer. With the prorogation, we were unable to finish it. We need to finish that. We had had a promise from the Prime Minister about a committee to look at pandemic spending issues, and that did not materialize, even though the Prime Minister committed to it. So it falls to our Ethics Committee to finish off some of these outstanding issues. I brought forward a motion yesterday, and I was pleased to see the Liberals very supportive of it, and the Liberals asked me to change some things in that motion, and I agreed. Why did I agree to change some things that I thought we should be discussing? It's that if we are going to get where we need to be willing to show some compromise here. So we moved off the issue of the judges. And there's a lot of questions about whether or not partisan interests are being involved in the hiring of Canadian judges, but we set that aside. I set aside the issues of Rob Silver, who's married to Katie Telford, who was given the contract in terms of the rent review with small business. I think it's a serious issue in terms of the rent crisis that we're seeing with small business who are still waiting and still calling for us. But I agreed to set that aside for the Liberals because they said, well, you know, technically it had been passed by the ethics commissioners, so we do not need to relitigate. I have questions about that, but I think, okay, fair enough. So what we have before us now, I think, is a working plan that I'm hoping that we can vote on and then get to our witness list. So just to recap what we've agreed to is that we have the commitment to finish off the WE study. I don't know how much more witnesses we need. I know the Liberals had a lot of witnesses when the study happened. It's up to them how many witnesses they want to bring. I have some areas where we need to focus on because we need to get our report to Parliament so we can close this off. It just looks too strange not to have it finished. I'm very glad that the Liberals and Conservatives and Bloc agreed with my request to look into the issue of Palantir. I'm very, very concerned by this company, this massive data surveillance corporation that I think has some very, very dark links in terms of the work they've done in Iraq, their ties to the CIA, the fact that this kind of data mining has raised serious questions about civil rights and privacy rights, which is naturally within our committee, but it belongs within the pandemic study because of the role of David McNaughton, who was our former ambassador, but also the former co-chair of the Trudeau campaign, and the fact that he was not registered to lobby, that he has been found guilty of trying to get gigs for Palantir in the middle of the pandemic, all the way up to the Deputy Prime Minister's office. I think that's very concerning. In a pandemic, we need to tell Canadians that of the massive amounts of money that will need to go out the door to help people through this, that money is always focused squarely on the making sure that people get through it, and that whoever gets the contracts for these get those contracts because of merit, and that's it, not because of political connections. Which brings us to the other thing that Liberals and Conservatives and Bloc agreed to, is that we were going to look into the contract of former Ethics Committee member Frank Baylis, a man who I've worked with many years. I've got a lot of respect for Frank Baylis, but there are questions about how that contract was awarded. Those are fair questions to ask. That's not cheap partisan politics. We have to know that contract was given without political favoritism to reassure Canadians. So we have that agreement. The Bloc amended the motion with the support that the chair gave them in terms of the documents. My understanding when I was reading the room last week was we were set to get those documents. So I don't see that there's any reason at this point to delay any further. I'm encouraging my colleagues to to pass this motion to get this pandemic spending study done, we need to tell Canadians we are actually watching how the spending is being done. We're looking at it in terms of the Conflict of Interest Act. We're looking at lobbying. I will certainly not be supporting continual extension of these hearings. We have an agreement to do the hearings. I'd like to get down to the witness list. We have other things we do need to work on. Certainly, some of my colleagues have expressed interest in working with me on the facial recognition study. That is really important right now. I think we can do really good work. And I will say, in the last Parliament, the Ethics Committee, I think, set a super standard in terms of us working across party lines to actually establish a number of standards in terms of the protections of Canadian citizens. The work of that Ethics Committee was recognized globally, and we were seen as global leaders on issues of privacy. So we have a standard to reach at our committee, and that means that we're all going to have to rise up. It means we're all going to have to give up something, but it means that we have to start getting down to work. So I'm asking my colleagues to move this along, and let's get this to a vote so that we can start picking our witness list. Thank you.